Well, I've had a day or two to think about Chapter 11 of The Mandalorian, and after watching it again, I think it was pretty good. Not only did we get a look at a new planet and the reveal of an important character from the universe, but we're finally getting somewhere in our quest to return Baby Yoda to his people. There were some other cool things that happened that may be important to the future, but I also think that this episode finally crystallized in my mind the main issue that I've had with this season. I seem to be continually more interested in where we're going than with what we're doing. Before I get into that, I want to go over some of the things that I really liked about this episode. It was nice seeing Mr. and Mrs. Geico reunited and Baby Yoda's interactions with them.
You know what I'm talking about.
I liked the landing sequence to Trask and how it mirrored the re-entry sequence to one of my most favorite movies ever, Apollo 13, directed by Bryce Dallas Howard's father. I liked how real Trask felt as a place. There is a verisimilitude that the Mandalorian consistently delivers in their environments, especially compared to some place like Exegol. Everywhere we go seems like a place that should exist in the Star Wars universe and recognizes that this galaxy is populated by more than just humans. We've got the aquatic Mon Calamari and Quarrens, two likely candidates for an environment such as this. This doesn't just feel like a set, it feels like someplace that's lived in. It has the appearance of being true or real. That is verisimilitude. I love the repurposing of military technology for civilian use. This thing really got my attention, and I have to say that their effects department needs to be commended for how real this whole sequence looks. My main question here is how long before we see this thing in Lego form? I liked that we finally got a concrete answer on the mask requirement that Mando strictly adheres to, but which conflicted with what we've seen elsewhere in the universe. This might also be the answer to another question that I've had, which was, how is Mando going to transform this season? Last season, right from the outset, we knew he had an issue with droids.
No droids.
At multiple points, we were reminded of his prejudice before we got to the explanation of why. At the climax of the season, he's given a reason to challenge this view, and at the beginning of this season, we can see that he has grown as a character.
Oh, so he likes droids now.
So maybe this season his challenge will be to accept that maybe this doesn't need to be the way.
This is the way.
Got it!
Maybe this is what will get Pedro out of his mask. We saw this issue raised in the very first episode when he met the Marshal. Now we've been reminded of it and also presented with an alternative view to challenge what Mando believes.
This is the way.
Maybe this is what his journey will be about this season. Or maybe not. I liked the Bo-Katan reveal, something that I felt could happen, but not something that I fully expected to happen.
A surprise, to be sure, but a welcome one.
I also appreciated that they got the actual voice actor to play her live-action character. I've seen some people complain about Mando's rescue here and later in the episode as Deus Ex Machina moments, and I disagree with that. This moment on the docks puts the Mandalorians on the board and lets us know that Mando is being watched. We don't know that the Mandalorians are on the board, but we know that something is going to happen, so it isn't that surprising when they show up to rescue him. Later, they're still in play when he needs rescuing again, so it's still not surprising. But I think it would have worked slightly better if we had just a bit more of a gap between his rejection and then acceptance of their assistance. I didn't really think the ship assault was that great, because I never felt any tension for the Mandalorians. They alternate between no concern over being shot at, to taking cover from being shot at, to walking into the line of fire, and it not really being an issue. I liked the cargo twist, which shows a bit more creativity than just walking into gunfire, but what I really think is interesting is that I ended up being more concerned about the bridge crew than I was about our heroes. I found myself empathizing with the pilots who seemed genuinely afraid of what was coming for them. Maybe this was done to make this character even more unsympathetic when he shoots them, or to show us that we're not really dealing with the Empire's best anymore. When discussing this episode with my Star Wars buddy,
We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
he brought up what he thought might be an inconsistency. Isn't Mando's mask sealed? If so, how is he drowning here? Right after he's rescued from almost drowning, Sasha Banks dives in and doesn't even get her hair wet. There's also a little audio cue when they take their helmets off to indicate that their suits are pressurized.
I was hoping that...
If you're wondering, that same sound is there when Mando takes his helmet off in Season 1. Overall, I thought this episode was pretty good. A lot of important things happened in a very short amount of time. We've finally found the Mandalorians we've been looking for since the season started, and they've given us the quest update to go meet Ahsoka Tano. This is where I kind of figured out what's been bothering me about this season, and it has to do with that old phrase, it's about the journey, not the destination. My issue is that right now, I'm more interested in the destination than the journey. We know we're going to go see Ahsoka, and it would make sense for us to see her in an episode written and directed by Dave Filoni. The problem there is that next week's episode is Favreau, and Dave Filoni isn't up until the week after that. So if I was a betting man, I would put money on next week being another filler, transitory episode that gets in the way of where we actually want to be. Maybe it's because we already knew Ahsoka was going to be in this season, which is one of the reasons why I try to avoid information like this. Or maybe it's because we knew what the step after finding the Mandalorians was going to be. Think about it like this. Luke's goal in A New Hope isn't to destroy the Death Star, it's to take R2 to Alderaan. It's when we get to Alderaan that the goal evolves to rescue the princess, escape the Death Star, and then finally we get to destroy the Death Star. So far this season, we've been on step 1, take R2 to Alderaan, but we already knew that step 2 was going to be rescue the princess, or in our case, find a Jedi. Maybe if I didn't know where we were going later, I would be more interested in what we're doing now. Maybe I'll be pleasantly surprised if next week we don't get a filler episode. I would much prefer to be wrong about that. Maybe you'll stick around for my next video, but until then, I thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you next time, and may the Force be with you, always.